So this is the first recording of the corporate talk. So the corporate talk that has a mission to bring people all over the globe to share their know-how and experience on the business, but mainly to bring the human side of business. And as a first speaker, first guest, I have here Reinaldo Normand. So thank you very much for
Thank you.
being.
It's a pleasure being here.
So Reinaldo, I'm very happy to have you here. And I will start introducing a little bit of yourself because you have a very interesting and global career. So you have founded several startups in US, Brazil, and China. So you have, for example, created the world's first 3D game console baked by Qualcomm Ventures. So you were an investment partner at Gamefounders Fund, an entrepreneur in residence at MIT, and advised more than 100 startups. So you have also wrote 3 books about innovation in Silicon Valley culture, and I will put here in the post the link to your books. And you have also been invited to speak about innovation and entrepreneurship at events, companies, and universities in more than 15 countries. So this is very impressive. And from all this experience, Reinaldo, currently I see that you're the CEO and co-founder of InnovaLab. So it's a very big honor to start the corporate talk with you here with us. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much, Carol. It's a pleasure again.
And Reinaldo, but based on this international career, you have in contact with a lot of students, founders of startups, entrepreneurs, corporate ventures. So what did you see in the last years that is happening in the business?
Well, a lot of things have changed in the last decade, I would say. So I think with the advent of smartphones, the exponentiality of technology has accelerated dramatically. By exponentiality, I mean technology does not evolve very slowly like most of things in the world do. So, for instance, USB charger today is more powerful than the computer that put the man on the moon. So just as an example. So this is
That's
one of the
true.
things that have changed dramatically and that has been accelerated by the advent of smartphones. But I think as we're talking about the human factor, I think there are some paradigm shifts that happened the last decade that we don't take into consideration because we are basically living them in real time. I think the new generation recognize these paradigm shifts better than us, but some of them are very interesting. One of them, for instance, that has become a commodity. You know, uh, even 20 years ago, before the internet, I mean, if you wanted to learn, you need to go to a university or to read books about that specific subject. Today, you can learn about anything that you want on Google or on YouTube or any social media. Of course, you need to be very smart to know and to understand what's a good information and what's not. But you can also
Mhm.
contact specialists, even if you don't know them. For instance, I've had a lot of interactions with medical doctors and virologists and pandemic specialists over Twitter and over social media. So you ask a question, they respond. So it's really rich. And I think most executives and companies have not, let's say, thought about that deeply, how this has changed everything. Because if you have a 10-year, 20-year career today, does not mean a lot, specifically in the areas related to the technology. So commodity, knowledge has become a commodity, number one. Number two, which is related, experience became overrated as well. So right now, if you are a young entrepreneur or a young student, you can start in a certain market with a lot more knowledge and a lot more up-to-date knowledge about that certain subject than someone that has a long career. So I work with students nowadays, and it's amazing how more efficient and effective they are regarding the current trends. You know, someone that's working in tech, which is my field of expertise, for instance, needs to unlearn what they have learned and learn again. And that becomes more difficult when you are 30, 40, 50, or 60. And the students, they just basically learn what's going on right now, a new language or a new tool or whatever, right? So I think this is one important distinction. And most of the most innovative companies that have been launched or that have grown the last decade are companies started by people with no expertise in the area. Example, Stripe was launched by two 19-year-old students from Ireland. It became the biggest, largest payment processor in the world right now.
That's true.
Uh, Elon Musk, which of course has launched SpaceX and Tesla with no previous knowledge of cars or rockets and so forth, so on. So I think we should not underestimate the capacity of the new generation to learn about new subjects, which is something I see a lot in corporate environments. You know, that oh, you
Yeah.
do not have a diploma on engineering, you do not have experience on this, and I do not think the world is working like that right now. So second, experience has become overrated. Third, there is an acceleration of learning. What I mean by that, as I said, I mean before a long time ago, the knowledge was, I mean, actually in the church and then at universities. It started in Europe, right, a long time ago, hundreds of years ago, and then moved to America or to Brazil or to other countries in the world. And the knowledge was very concentrated at the 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 university or at the library, etc. And as I said, this is moving with the advent of smartphones. You can Google anything now in seconds and learn more about the subject. And as time progresses, that will go into AR glasses. I mean, glasses like this one, where I can see the word, but I can also search by voice, or I can see overlay of computer image on my field of view. So that will accelerate fast. And then I think in by the beginning or mid of the next decade, at the most, we'll have a brain-computer interfaces which basically will read and write thoughts in your mind. You can transmit that over the internet. It's what Elon Musk,
Wow.
for instance, is working at Neuralink. Basically, for instance, if I know something about a certain subject, instead of typing or talking, which is very slow bit rate. So, I mean, I can talk for 1 hour, I can cover a certain amount of subjects. If I could send all my knowledge to you in real time or to the viewers in real time over the internet, that would be amazing. So I think by the beginning and the mid of the next decade, we are going to see these implants, uh, not mainstream yet, but demonstrated that they are possible and they work. Okay, and then
Wow, this is very impressive.
yeah, and then I mean, who knows when this will become mainstream like a smartphone? Maybe in 20 years, but it's going to happen. And when that happens, we need to be prepared for this new paradigm shift because everything that I'm saying, like experience or knowledge, I mean, they will become even more relevant. So the skills
Yeah.
that we need to have will be different. Third, acceleration of learning, which I think is important. Fourth is the power in the world shifted to tech companies. So now tech companies are so powerful, they are worth like $8 trillion, $9 trillion, depending on the fluctuation of the stock market. Only the five top, Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, and Facebook, are worth $9 trillion. Okay, and they make a lot of money. They make contrary to what people think, they're very, very profitable. And now they are investing their profits in everything from biotech to new medicine to AI to drones to space, you know. So,
Beyond their scope, their initial
yes,
scope.
yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Beyond the initial scope. And most importantly, they are spending, I think, $140 billion dollars in R&D, just as five companies. Okay. And just to have an idea, all the universities in the US combined, Harvard, Stanford, all of them, they spend $75 billion dollars in R&D. So what I mean by that, research is moving to the private sector, to the big companies, big tech companies, and also to the startups. So if you are a PhD or a master student in the future, you very likely will be hired by a tech company, not by university, to conduct the research, because they pay more
Mm.
and they give you the tools to do whatever you want to do. So
Mhm.
companies should be aware of that because when I was at MIT, I saw that a big chunk of MIT revenues was research sponsored by companies. So let's say a Bosch or I don't know, Embraer or any kind of large company, Boeing, they fund research at the universities, kind of to to learn and to to improve their businesses. And I think this is moving away from the university. So the universities won't
Yeah.
have the best researchers in a decade. They will be
Hmm.
all hired by private tech companies. So this is super interesting. And I think, overall, um, what's important nowadays is learning how to learn and not what you do know. So I think that's the biggest paradigm shift. So never underestimate younger people or people with no expertise in that subject, because I think they will surprise you positively.
Yeah. And it's amazing when we talk about this new generation, if they're approaching the market with so much high tech know how, and their speed of the mindset and their speed to expect for the results is also faster. Do you believe the companies today are ready for this generation?
No, they are not, for several reasons. I think one is what is being taught at universities is not what companies want. So I've heard that from companies. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we want to hire, but we cannot hire. We need to train our workforce, from even from top universities, which is interesting. So why? Because again, it's evolving too fast, and universities cannot cope with the pace of acceleration of learning. So I think a lot of companies I'm seeing in Silicon Valley, for instance, they are starting to train their own workforce. Google just
Mm-hmm.
launched a product management program for undergrads, where they do a 6 months course on Google online, and
Mm-hmm.
if they do well, they're hired.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
even university, I think, will be affected dramatically in this decade
The
because,
education model, right, in
yeah,
general. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think the mid tier of university, let's say the 80%, I think I still think the MITs or Stanfords or Sorbonne, all these top universities have good brands and good networking. They will still survive the next decade, but the institutions in the middle, I think they will be cannibalized by their own corporate trainings ministered by companies, which I'm seeing now in Silicon Valley, right? So the other thing is about culture. You talked about the second thing is about culture. You talked about specifically if the companies are ready. No, they're not ready. This new generation, they are freer, they have more options. They want autonomy. They want maybe to start a company. They want to be, you know, uh, freer to pursue their interests. And companies are still using the old model that, oh, we will tell you what to do and you just obey it, right? So I think, companies will have a very unpleasant surprise in this decade about how this new generation in the workforce, they will basically say, oh, I'm sorry, but I will start my own company to do this, or I will work in a company that gives me this autonomy or these resources to pursue whatever I want. So I think that the second issue then is the culture. And the third issue is, as I said, the relevance, because a lot of these companies that were once very relevant, they are basically being disrupted by small startups. So,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of young kids that I mentored over the last 5 years, they do not want to join the usual suspects. They want to join
Ah,
either tech companies or startups. So, there is
interesting.
no appeal anymore to this new generation because of the culture, which was my point number two. So it's a very different world. And I'm working with these students, and I didn't believe that before I started working with students. So, and it's impressive how good they are and how smart they are and how knowledgeable they are about subjects that theoretically they are not experts, because they have
And
the
it's
internet.
interesting that you talk about culture. I can see that you travel so many countries. Do you see this happening all around? Do you see the local culture also influencing a lot? So, US, Brazil, China, Europe, Germany, UK, you see so many different cultures. How does it affect this new
Yeah,
generation?
no, that's a great question. It affects immensely because what I'm seeing now overall is I mean, that's obvious for everyone listening, but it's very clear the shift of power to Asia. Okay, so what I see, for instance, in Europe, is that people are not innovating, they are not giving space to the new generation, and they're losing either to the west coast of the US. It's not even the east coast anymore. The east coast is dead in terms of innovation, and
Mhm,
China, basically. Okay, there's a little bit of Sweden or Finland or South Korea, mostly, but the countries that we expected to be very competitive in this new market powered by software and artificial intelligence, like Germany or Japan, which are amazing in engineering and product development, they're very, very, very behind, you know. And I think it's because of this mindset of doing things by the book, very, I mean, homogeneous, very based on processes. And that's fine for a lot of things, but in this new era driven by software, which AI is part of, I think it's more chaotic, it's more anarchic in a way. And they are
mhm.
losing a lot of ground in terms of software development. If you
And
see,
speed.
yeah, exactly. If you see anything that's
Mhm,
really new and innovative, I mean, from smartphones to autonomous cars or reusable rockets or any kind of AI, this all comes from either the West Coast, mostly of the US, mostly Silicon Valley and Seattle, in LA a little bit, and the China, you know, and Israel as well. Israel is good, but they are too small. They do not have the size of the US or China. So I talk about this. Oh, I have been talking about this for 5 years to executives, C-level executives, and they don't get it. They will not see the
mhm,
train running over them this decade.
mhm,
You know,
mhm,
suddenly, very, very, very large corporations or industries will be decimated by startups and tech companies. One example that
mhm,
we can say right now is like say watches, right? I mean, when Apple announced the first Apple Watch, the Swiss Association of Manufacturers of Watches, whatever their name is, said, "Oh, Apple Watch is not a competitor. We are about handicraft products with great art and blah 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 blah." Today, the Apple Watch not only outsells them in terms of units, all the industry in Switzerland, but also in terms of revenue and of course profit. So all watches will be smart watches. Yeah, uh, I mean, we are younger, right? So we get this, and I think all watches will be smart watches, and this hesitancy to jump or to cannibalize your own industry, which is like Steve Jobs said. I mean, I'm launching the iPhone, it will cannibalize the iPod, but it's better that we do that than other companies do that. So a lot of industry, taxis, you know, watches, I mean, everything. I mean, rockets, aerospace industry, they are being cannibalized by new entrants and startups and tech companies. So
I,
banks,
I, I love the phrase from Steve Wesley, the investor in California, who says, if you're not cannibalizing yourself, someone will. So
exactly.
it finds exactly this
Yeah.
movement.
So, and I think this happens because of the incentives that are put in large companies to executives, where it's more important to have short-term goals, quarterly goals, and therefore getting their bonuses or giving their team the bonuses than really innovate. You know, so the incentives are very different in startups where you need to survive, you need to do something 10 times better, one order of magnitude better, more efficient or cheaper, whatever, to survive and then to become a large company. So I think there will be a shake-up this decade on large companies. They
Yeah.
will see the disruption that's going to happen. It's already happening, but I think like car manufacturers, I mean, in 10 years, I would say half of them will be bankrupt easily,
Mhm,
you know, because of automation, autonomy, and electric cars. So they're not moving. One or two of them are moving, you know, toward these goals, but they
mhm,
don't know how to do it because again, they got so good at building gas or diesel powered cars, that it's much easier for a new entrant like Tesla to do everything better, batteries and drivetrain, autonomy, software, and so forth, so on. So I think that's going to happen in all industries.
And when you say about this generation who is used to this high tech and going for it's already coming to the market with this software technology mindset, uh, it means also that the career, what they envision as a career, is also different, right? So from the old model that spend years in the same company, grow in several levels, want to be a chef, and so on. So
Yeah.
how do you envision this, their vision of what is career?
Yeah, I mean, I think I could take a corporate Japan as an example. It used to be like until 10 years ago that when you apply to a company after university, you would be there forever. That was the culture of Japan. And now I'm seeing on the tech scene in Japan, which is a very conservative country regarding career, as you know, that people are jumping much more. Like, oh, I want to work at this company for 3 years, learn what I wanted to learn, and then go to another company. So the new generation basically is looking for challenges because now they are in power. That's the difference because companies need coders, they need software engineers, they need UX designers, they need product managers, and these people became very powerful, and they can choose whatever they want. And when you have choice, you choose the one either that pays you better or that gives you more the most satisfaction, right? So I think, I mean, companies will need to compete like 10 times, 100 times more to retain those talents and to attract them. I mean, to attract them and to retain them at the company, because these young kids, I mean, they will just choose whatever they want to do, and generally, purpose will play a much bigger role than it is today. Of course, in countries where the market is still not very competitive and etc., still the status quo still reigns, but it's a matter of time. You know, I see even in Brazil that this new generation does not want to work to for banks or to large companies or to Petrobras, or they want to work for New Bank or Quinto Andar. I mean, the startups that are disrupting, I mean, certain sectors in the industry. So because they're cooler, they pay better, they give them more autonomy. Everything I said before, they are
Yeah.
tuned to the desires of this new generation, while the large companies still do those boring, dynamics. They call off psychologists that asks you what you want to be in 10 years and that kind of thing. This does not exist anymore in the hiring process of let's say startups or tech companies. They basically ask you to solve problems. I mean, in the interview, and they bring people that will work for, or people that will be a boss. I mean, will be the boss of that person to interview you to see if you fit in the culture and if you know how to solve problems in real life. So I think that's the biggest difference that's going on.
And when you see this envision that they have to, most of them also starting to learn how to be entrepreneur in the universities, they are bringing all of this concept. It means also that most of these new generation want to create something new and be independent. The companies I can see on the same sides, they are trying to run these entrepreneurial programs, so then they give this right to the employees. But do you see how companies can really work in a more effective way so there is a space? Because if everyone create a new business, then all the business will need employees to make it bigger, right? So
Yeah.
you have create your own business, but you want to become a big company. So how these could be balanced in a way that we have exactly this freedom, autonomy, and power. So how companies should also prepare themselves.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and it's very complicated because Steve Jobs once said, a company that needs an innovation department already failed at innovation, because you need to create the culture of innovation in the whole company, from the top to the bottom. And what's happening is a lot of these companies that I see now, big companies all around the world, they are creating innovation departments, and they are innovating or bringing startups or doing accelerated programs, but they do not know how to do this, and they are doing this just to please shareholders that are complaining they are not innovative. It's not for real, you know what I mean? It's just as
Mm-hmm.
a facade where the market say, oh, company X has a, let's say, innovation office in Silicon Valley, you know. But what matters is really, I mean, as I said many times before in this conversation, is to give them the employees autonomy, freedom, and purpose, and let them create good products. And that, in my view, I mean, I'm not executive of a big company, so you interview others, and I know that's very difficult to implement that. I think the only way to do that is to create kind of a spin-offs in certain areas that have the benefit of having the budget or let's say or stability that the big company provides you, but completely independent. They need to make mistakes. They need to, I mean, they won't be profitable in 2 or 5 years. They need to have those spin-offs. And the other way is to acquire startups and let them run independently. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of companies, when they acquire startups, they say, no, now we know more than you, and then we'll control you. Now you need to obey to what we want you to do. And I think large companies should acquire startups and let them run totally independent, except by
Mm-hmm.
the allocation of budget, right? Which is done in conjunction with the large company. So I don't think it's possible to change a large company unless you have a very, very modern and down to earth and experienced CEO that does this top down. Even so, it will take years or maybe decades in the largest company. So I think their destiny is to uh, to get smaller, and some of them will
Yeah.
bankrupt. You know,
So maybe I can also conclude from here a vision that uh, connect the best assets of these two worlds could be the best solution, right? Big companies, they have money, they have market accessibility, sales infrastructure that can be easily spread solutions, but they don't have the flexibility and the speed of a startup. So then when we combine both, maybe is the best way, right?
well,
And
if the culture matches, I mean, again, the problem is mostly the culture, because you can have all of this, you can have the branding, you can have money, you can have awesome people, smart people, but startups, they operate in a different world where the rules are different, you know. They do not
mm-hmm,
care about making mistakes. They test instead of doing business plans and spending time with market research. They just go to the market. So they operate by different rules. And I think what I've seen talking to C levels at large companies, they don't get it. They simply don't
mm-hmm,
get it. They think it's it's just a fad and a BS. I mean, in a way, and they don't believe it because they also get afraid that they will be disrupted by startups. They won't be needed anymore. So they block consciously or unconsciously the productivity of a startup they acquired. So if you see acquisitions, even in the tech sector in the last decade or so, the ones that worked were the ones that were run as independent companies, like YouTube or Instagram,
mm-hmm,
or the one even in gaming companies that acquire studios to make games. I mean, the ones that succeeded are the ones that the founders of that company are still in control, but they have the
mm-hmm.
resources of the larger
Yeah.
company. So what you're saying, I mean, in the ideal world, yes, that's exactly what should be done. But in practice, the culture does not allow these two to speak the same language, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a very, very unsurmountable problem to overcome. It's very hard unless it comes top down, and unless the shareholders and the board understands this very well. It's really hard to replicate, downwards.
Very, very interesting talk. And I can imagine that do you believe the pandemics, this moment that the whole world is facing right now, it's also accelerating the companies to be more agile and more digital in the way that this new generation also are willing to?
Yes, definitely. I've seen companies that lasted 3 years talking, 5 years, I would say, talking about digital transformation, but I don't think they know what they're doing. They basically are saying that to please the shareholders and to have a checklist. Oh, we are doing digital transformation. Good, you are in the right path. But the pandemic will actually make them really do that, because I think pandemic accelerated in a decade the
Mm-hmm.
digital transformation of the
That's
world,
true.
right? Not only of companies, but government, institutions, processes, and so forth, so on. So definitely, and I think now is the time to change the leadership of these large companies and put someone with a younger mindset, not necessarily younger in terms of age, but with someone that understands this new generation, that understands what's changing, and to see if they can be salvaged, because it will be a bloodbath. I'm absolutely sure this decade will see one of the best brands in the world basically going bankrupt because they did
Mm-hmm.
not get it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the pandemic accelerated, and I think it's an opportunity to really change and not trying to please the shareholders or the marketing department, blah blah blah. Because I mean, what's digital acceleration digital what's the name? Digital transformation, right? What is that
Transformation.
really?
Yeah.
I mean, define digital transformation. Nobody knows how to define. Oh, we are going through the digital processes, or nobody knows what they're talking about. It's just marketing. Most
Mm-hmm.
cases, okay? Because the
Yeah.
ones
Yeah.
that
Mm-hmm.
but because the ones that are really doing digital transformation are doing quietly, and are
Mm-hmm.
doing that deeply. You know, you don't hear about
Mm-hmm.
them. They're just doing it, and they're becoming efficient, and they're changing the mindset. But I'm not saying that I mean I'm right in all of these things. These are just the evidence I see from my point of view as someone that interacts with both students, companies,
Mm-hmm.
C-level executives, and universities and startups. You know, I think it's very clear. You know, there will be a digital transformation, which in my view is the startups will take over the large companies in 1 or 2
Interesting.
decades.
Interesting. And I can imagine also that this digital transformation accelerated by the pandemics was mainly because companies were more in the day by day. And then all the digital projects are later, we need it, later, not now, not priority. But then the
Exactly.
pandemic hit, and then all of these were prioritized, right? They see the
Yeah,
need.
exactly. And I think most importantly, I think any digital products in the first 5 years they lose money, and companies, mainly public companies, are super afraid of losing money because the shares go down, or you know, the stock market, which is the basis for compensation for most executives. I mean, they do not have the incentive. So I think, I mean, uh, they need to think long term. They need to think 5, 10 years ahead, you know, and there needs to be continuation, because what happens at large companies as well is someone that's very cool and understands the market, then they're basically burned in 2, 3 years because their project did not generate cash flow, right? And then it changed the leadership, it changed the whole strategy, you know, for that specific sector. They need to do a kind of a state program, not a government program, you know,
Yeah.
for the company, like something that's 10 years and will be immutable, whoever's in charge, you know. And I think that's the biggest issue, which I see very clearly in large companies. They do not have the results they want in 2, 3 years. They scrap the program and they change everything. And I mean, the executives will still get their bonuses and etc., but the company will just go down,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know?
And to conclude all this talk, Reinaldo, I really appreciate all of your insights. What would you give as a recommendation for the companies thinking about this new generation who are already coming by startup or by the corporate world? So, how do you see a big recommendation to open up everyone's eyes?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I'm not an executive. It's easy to talk, difficult to do, but I would say several things. One is stop thinking that young people do not have experience or do not know about anything. Instead of that, challenge them to learn and to implement or to show what they know in practice. Real skills, either soft or hard skills. If you are hiring a coder, could be a 15-year-old kid in high school. Do a program where he can solve a problem or can submit a code, I mean, whatever, something practical. Second, stop paying attention to diplomas. That's very polemical in many countries of the world, but in Silicon Valley, it's already a reality. None of the companies in Silicon Valley require diplomas anymore, right? Or Apple or Google or startups, because they're exactly doing that. I mean, show me what you're capable of instead of show me your diploma, you know? So stop requiring that, because you will be surprised at the level of quality that you'll find on kids that are starting at 14, 15 years old, which I deal with them daily, and instead of saying, oh, you are too young or you do not have even a university diploma, train them to what you want, give them an opportunity and see what happens, right? And third is change your executive composition and put some people that are younger in terms of mindset in charge. People that it's a war that the large corporations are fighting. They have not realized it yet, but it's a war. So you need to have wartime efforts to win this battle. And I think, change the type of executives that you are in top positions, at least some of them, right? Because otherwise, it's moot. All the efforts are moot. It won't work. It's just the illusion that's working, which is what I see today, right? And stop doing marketing about the digital transformation or whatever, like programs for students. Do it really from deeply. Digital transformation is started with actions, not with words, So that's my advice. But again, easier said than done, right? It's easy for me to say those things in my position because I do not run a large corporation. But I've talked to executives who have run or who run large corporations. They're very, very worried, and some of them get it, but the majority does not.
And you speak by the new generation that you have experienced. So it's very good that you brought this up here. And I'm very thankful for you, Reinaldo, for your time to be here, the first speaker in the corporate talk, and a very interesting and rich content. So I really appreciate your time. For the ones who are watching here, I will publish all the links to Reinaldo's books so everyone can keep the track. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure. And I think we need more initiatives like yours to bring what's really happening in the market to the corporate folks that live
I'm
in a
sure. I'm sure it's not the first time you'll be here. I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Reinaldo.
Thank you. Bye-bye.